Hey, everybody. Welcome to Game Mess Mornings with me, Jeff Grubb, your host from giantbomb.com. Thank you for tuning in. In this episode, we're going to be talking about reviews for another Switch 2 edition release and PlayStation cutting more jobs. But it's going to be a good one because we have Phil Salvador on the show. Phil, how are you doing?
Hello, I'm doing well. I think the last time I was on, I talked about how I was very tired, but I had tea. That is still true.
Yeah.
Being in Pacific time, this is a little earlier than usual, but
Yep.
I'm fired up. I'm ready to talk about this impossibly wordy Switch 2 game. But
Oh, man. They somehow get weirder and wordier with each of these releases. This is my favorite so far, for sure. We'll talk about that and more here pretty soon. But yeah. How you been? Saw you briefly at GDC. It was great to see you. Your panel was a lot of fun. What was it like putting that all together and getting all those great people together to do a panel?
It's a lot of fun because we all know each other. For
Right.
context for listeners, we had a panel called What's New in Game History, where it was just like, hey, here's everything happening in the field with museums or emulators or, academic press, like all these little subfields. It's a pretty small field, so all of us just kind of knew each other, and it was like, all right, let's get Wes on, let's get, Tarandre on. So it was just very fun to see everyone in one place and get that all through. We could have trimmed our things by about 1 minute apiece and left a little bit of Q&A, but we were very happy with it.
Yeah, I mean that's how it goes. And I tell you, I showed up and I did not feel cheated by the lack of a Q&A. I was glad to get even more content from all of you. So that was it's really like, oh man, and each perspective was so different. You all came at it from different angles. It just felt like, oh man, we're going from this to that, this to that. Very cool.
Yeah. How long were you at the Festival of Gaming this year? It was
I left on Wednesday, so I got in on Sunday night and left on Wednesday. So yeah.
Okay, you didn't get to see the show floor of all the weird AI crap.
No.
Okay.
My understanding, it was pretty heavy with that. Yeah.
It was heavy, but it was also like all the space that wasn't leased out by all the companies that are laying everyone off and have no money anymore was taken up by like common areas with like couches and indie games. And it was like, I kind of like this. Like maybe
That's
this
neat.
isn't not great for the health of the event, maybe, but it was a great vibe. So positive things to that.
Yeah, good. I hope that the people see the people running the show see the value in keeping stuff like that going and just enabling people to connect, because that has always been the most important part of GDC for sure. So,
Oh my God, yeah.
hopefully they can make it make sense for them. But yeah, I did come away from that GDC thinking, I'm looking at a lot of people going into these panels about AI, and they do seem very keen on this. So, expecting a lot more stories on that topic going forward for sure.
Oh Lord.
Yep, exactly. Let's go ahead and get into the show, everybody. Thank you for listening. We are Giant Bomb. We're independent games media. We're out here on our own, but we have you at our back. If you go to giantbomb.com/join, become a premium member, you can ensure the future of a healthy independent games media, and we really appreciate everyone who has. If you haven't yet, go ahead and jump on board. You get ad-free versions of our shows. It gets you some really cool new premium shows. Marry Me Tomodachi, the one episode of This Is the Run, a Millionaire Edition that you need to watch, and there's some practice runs before that as well. There's lots of cool stuff happening over there. Join up, see it for yourself. It's special. Like, it's cool to do this special stuff that's just for y'all, and we really appreciate, again, everyone who's come through and supported us. If you can't support us financially, we get it. Tell a friend. That means the world to us as well. As far as this show goes, most weekdays, I, Jeff Grubb, will help piece your gaming life back together. That includes breaking news and maybe even some of our own original reporting. For all these topics, I'll get the input of a bona fide expert who will make me look smart. If you are watching live on Twitch, welcome. You can always listen to the show later on podcast feeds by searching for Game Mess Mornings, or find the RSS feed on giantbomb.com. You can also catch the show later with chapters and timestamps on YouTube. Hello, YouTube. All right, we have a lot to get into, so let's start the morning mess with a couple of review roundups. First, Critic reviews for Super Mario Bros. Wonder Nintendo Switch 2 Edition plus Meetup in Bellabel Park. Yeah, it's got
Peter Jackson's Super Mario Brothers Wonder.
It's man, that is a lot to say. That it's about equivalent to the Mario Party Jamboree Switch 2 Edition that had its own subtitle and stuff like that and said Jamboree like 5 times. This one has an 84 on OpenCritic. It does seem like those reviews are specifically for the Switch 2 edition. 9 out of 10 from Steve C. at the 6 axis, who says Super Mario Bros. Wonder, I'm just going to say Nintendo Switch 2 edition, is a great upgrade to the original game if you're going to take advantage of the multiplayer modes. but is far less essential if you're mostly a solo player. There are some nice additions for the main campaign, but the £17 price point feels excessive without party play. Taken as a complete package, however, this makes the already fantastic game even more wonderful and addresses most of the issues we had with it. 7 out of 10 from Bobby Pashalides, I'm going to say, at Console Creatures. Super Mario Bros. Wonder Nintendo Switch 2 Edition plus Meetup in Bellabel Park is a fine offering from Nintendo, but it's another Switch 2 title offering an upgrade with not enough substance. And then an 8 out of 10 from Alistair Kennedy, Kennedy at Gfinity. Super Mario Bros. Wonder Nintendo Switch 2 Edition is the definitive version of the 2023 hit, adding 4K clarity, and the social-heavy Bellabel Park DLC featuring new minigames, Rosalina as a playable character, and family-friendly additions like Assist Mode. It's a must-buy for newcomers and social players, despite minor visual upgrades and familiar progression hurdles. Yeah, this is another one of those weird ones, Phil, where a lot of these improvements are ones that feel like they, probably should just be included in a patch. There is a separate patch for this game that includes some of these things, but then the Nintendo Switch 2 edition does have like assist mode. It's they've listened to some criticisms about what it's like to play this game local multiplayer that in the core game with like little kids. They've addressed some of that stuff where like the camera now can stick just on player one instead of swapping over to, let's say, a 5-year-old who's struggling to play the game, and then everyone has to move at their pace. That stuff is cool, and I think that's like a free upgrade. Kind of getting this game to 4K, that's okay, that's cool. It already looked pretty sharp, but I'll take it. That's a Nintendo Switch 2 edition feature. And then this Bellabel Park stuff, which I've like gone and seen, but because I wasn't able to play online and I wasn't able to set up a local multiplayer, and there's kind of two sides to the Bellabel Park theme park like presentation here. I couldn't really do anything with any of that stuff. It's all multiplayer features. So I don't know how to assess this personally yet. I'll say that they presented this, Phil, as a multiplayer sort of expansion. They're like, hey, we have a lot of fun, like kind of party game stuff. And so, okay, is there any single player stuff? Yeah, there'll be some additions, and those additions are changes like Rosalina, some new enemy characters in the single player campaign popping up here and there, that kind of stuff. That is interesting, but it's definitely not enough to justify this for, I think, most people. How do you feel about it, Phil?
It's really funny. As I was running this through in my head, my two thoughts that came in first were like, oh, back in my day, they would call this, Game of the Year edition or Mario Wonder Gold. But like, the more I thought about it, it's like, no, I understand them wanting to distinguish it as its own product. I get the value of that.
Of course.
And the other thought, you don't under any circumstances have to hand it to Notch. But I remember when Minecraft was blowing up, he was saying something like, this game should get more expensive over time because we're adding so much. And so like, as I thought about it, it's like on paper, I get why Nintendo is doing this. I get why they're doing it as a separate product with a certain price, but like I understand it, and I think probably for people who aren't us, it probably makes sense to bill it as a separate product like this. I have to imagine, especially if there were families who didn't jump on it, who have a Switch 2 now and want something to play together, it makes sense. I get why they're doing this. Certainly more than adding a couple extra levels to Kirby or whatever happened with that one.
Yes, that was like remixing some levels with maybe some fresh levels here and there. Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed that stuff, but yeah, this feels it is distinct from that for sure. And we like you said, I get it on paper, and I get it as they get ready to release the Mario movie, Mario Galaxy. Like that will do exactly what the first game did and get a huge audience of families excited to go back to their Switch and now their Switch 2. Be like, hey, what Mario games have we missed that we can pick up and what's in the store? And having this game out there with Switch 2 edition on the box will make a difference to them and going, oh, great, there is this new game, effectively a new game to me, and it's got an update, and it takes advantage of the Switch 2 I spent a lot of money on, so I feel like it's worth whatever money I'm spending on it. Yeah, that all makes sense. I do think that this Switch 2 edition run that Nintendo's been on is, for the audience that has primarily shown up for the Switch 2 so far, which are the enthusiasts. I think this concept is wearing thin for sure, where people are like, I kind of want more from these things, or like the promise of real actual follow-up games and sequels, and the idea that like, hey, where is the next Animal Crossing instead of Animal Crossing New World or whatever it is.
Funky Edition, yeah.
Yes, Funky Edition, exactly. And I we're getting a little bit antsy on that side of things, and I think Nintendo is probably going to see that reflected in the sales numbers for a lot of these things, unless this one specifically breaks out to that bigger audience because of the movie.
I mean, it's a weird contradiction, right? Is like for the audience that wants to spend $20 on this, it's like, no, this makes a ton of sense. Nintendo's targeting that. That's just not who owns Nintendo Switch 2s right now, right?
Yeah.
Like I was thinking about, we talked to the designer of Spyro the Dragon last year, and he mentioned that, when they were designing it, I think it was Mark Cerny said like, hey, design this for a lower age audience because right now it's all enthusiasts. As time goes on, it's going to widen to a broader family audience. Maybe this would make sense next year in terms of like actually having some kind of return on investment, but I don't know. That's a weird place to be in when you're a family-friendly company where everyone who's bought it so far are the like spend $500 in it the first month people.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you're right that demographic makeup of the Switch 2 owners does slowly morph over time if Nintendo's successfully able to hit the big points that they're going to want to hit with the movie, with releasing an actual 3D Mario and a Zelda and Animal Crossing and Super Smash Brothers. Every time they do that, the funnel gets wider and wider and wider. And having this game just sitting there ready to go, Nintendo's proven that they're able to make games like that take advantage of those multiple points of people taking interest in the system and keeping the prices high throughout the entire generation so that they get the full effect of that excitement.
And if someone shows up 2 years from now, this is still the same price. It's still a relatively new game to them. Like that doesn't change.
Exactly. Yes. The window at which a game feels new is longer and longer than ever. I mean, if they released a new Mario 2D platformer this year, it would look probably pretty similar to this game. And why wouldn't it? They kind of are used to doing that with new Super Mario Brothers. They're probably going to go with this aesthetic a couple of times. So it's like, yeah, well, this feels about right. All right, getting to the other review roundup here. Critic reviews for Screamer, which we talked a little bit about on the Bombcast yesterday. This is an anime racing arcade racer sort of thing. It has dual stick controls where you steer with the front tires with like the left stick, and then you kind of go into a drift with the right stick. I thought it was pretty cool. Not everyone does. 79 on OpenCritic from a bunch of reviews. I think it's like a little bit over 10 reviews, so maybe it's still a little bit early. 72 from Phil Iwanuk from PC Gamer, who says, an immaculately presented arcade racer with 1,000 good ideas, but the twin stick drifting wasn't one of them. So yeah, that might be your mileage may vary sort of thing, where it kept me very engaged and the part of the game that I think I liked the most, but I can see people getting frustrated by it. 8 out of 10 from Luke Riley at IGN. Tedious characters and difficulty spikes notwithstanding, Screamer is a unique and confidently assembled racer that feels like the result of locking Blur in a room for 12 months with nothing but a Crunchyroll subscription. And then 8 out of 10 from Stephen Tailby at Push Square. Screamer is a bold and exciting arcade racing game that stands out from the pack. It takes some big swings, and most of them have worked out, save for a story that maybe outstays its welcome. The racing itself is unique and challenging, and once you have a handle on all of its systems, it's very rewarding to master. That's how I feel about it as well. With its stylish presentation on top, this is one racer very much in its own lane. Phil, this game's pretty cool. I think I kind of like every time I see something like this, it's like, man, have people in the industry figured out a way to continue making arcade style games work and make sense for them? Because it feels like for the most part, big publishers have decided they don't make sense. So it's like have smaller studios kind of unlocked some ideas here, and a game that's like, hey, let's match up anime presentation with arcade racing feels like, oh yeah, that is one solution you can come at this with that could possibly work. And it seems like it's working in this case.
Yeah, I mean, I can't think of specific titles, but I feel like the last couple of years have been good for arcade racers as a genre. Yes. I feel like we're kind of coming around on that. Weirdly, I was thinking about this. It comes back to, I want to say it was 2014. There was a game that got a Kickstarter that was on Steam called Drift Stage, which that game never came out. All the developers had kind of a crash out. It was a whole thing. But
sure.
I remember that was one of the moments where people said, oh shit, we can just make games that look like this. So yep. I like that, the twin stick thing. I have not played it. I don't know how that plays, but I like that this is not carrying water for the entire genre. It's not like, oh, well, this game didn't work out super well, so there will never be an arcade racer again. It's going to be like one of 5 games that look or act like this. That makes me happy because it means you can have different perspectives. Like I saw someone in the chat mention Automodelista, and it's like, yeah, you can have that and a Ridge Racer and whatever like was happening with Blur and Split Second and those games, like those can all exist and have their own approach on this stuff. That makes me really happy. That to me is healthier than, one of these games selling 5 million copies or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's, I think you're right that arcade racers have sort of reestablished themselves in the last couple of years. I mean, there's that year where like not Burnout, Cruise and Blast, and then a couple other arcade racers, like I think a Hot Wheels Racing kind of came out at the same time.
There was a Garfield kart racing game. I don't think that is necessarily.
No, everyone was raving about Garfield Kart and Garfield Kart 2, of course. This is a genre that I think everyone involved has gone, yeah, we can make this work. It is cost effective, and we can play around with the systems here and try new things and have a fresh idea still. Not everything's actually been tapped out, because when we were getting a lot of arcade racers, the idea was you're either sim or you're drifting or you're trying to like look just really cool. And it's like, could we do more with the controls? And that has been happening. And a game like this is a really good example of that I really appreciate. Arcade sports is the one where I'm like, are we going to get those back? And, I hope that we get to a point where developers that are making these arcade racers kind of look over and say, hey, can we make the NBA jams come back? And a bunch have tried here and there throughout the years, but it just feels like there's got to be a movement at some point where a lot of studios kind of wake up and say, EA's not going to do that anymore. We could maybe own it. Like we have a lot of experience now. Maybe we can get the funds together to get like an official license and really go for it. I don't know. I wonder if we're in a world where that could happen. What do you think?
I was thinking like the market seems so divided now between like you either have to make a high-end AAA game or something like that ends up on mobile realistically.
Yeah.
Or like the space that is happening where people are doing that. I never thought I would say this, but it's whatever Acclaim is now, with their like the basketball classics game or something. So like, I don't know that market exists anymore. I don't know if there's someone who's going to spend $10 on an arcade sports game. I feel like I almost want to say there's more of a chance for success for people like not pursuing a license and just making like an actiony arcadey game people can play, rather than trying to be like, we're going to make the new NFL Blitz and work within all the expensive like likeness rights and licenses and blah, 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 versus someone just making a new sport that is fun to play online with someone.
Yeah, that's I think you're probably right. Like Captain Tsubasa is the one I'm thinking about recently, where it's like that's kind of an arcadey soccer game that has this anime presentation and a story mode, and that doesn't need an official license, and that works. It's like, man, could you do more of that? And again, anime and arcade style games working together, I would welcome more of that.
What was the soccer one that came out recently that everyone destroyed Dib at? Was that? Rocket League destroyed Dib. It was Min-Max you crushed at.
Right. That was what was that called? Chat.
Rematch?
Rematch, yes.
Okay,
yes.
Yeah. That feels like more fertile ground than trying to make like, we're going to let you play as LeBron James and he can like, decapitate people or whatever they did back in the NBA Jam days. You couldn't decapitate people in NBA Jam, but
if you knew what you were doing, maybe. Yeah, I never could make it happen for sure. But the kids on the playground swore I could do it. All right, well, let's keep going here. Tomodachi Life, the previews were out for Living the Dream. People seem very positive on it. If you don't believe them, if you don't trust the press, well, you can check it out for yourself. There is a welcome version demo. It's the name of the demo. It's the welcome version. That's available now. This is from Sal Romano at Gamatsu. A demo for Tomodachi Life Living the Dream, dubbed the welcome version, is now available for Switch via Nintendo eShop. Nintendo announced. Save data from the demo can be transferred to the full game when it launches. Players who finish the demo will also receive a hamster costume for your Mii character to wear in the full game. The game is out April 16th. I'm getting the sense that Nintendo's pretty confident in this game. They're kind of playing it up, trumpeting it up, and doing, parading around for these previews, and the previews went very well, and this demo ready to go, and it just sounds like they have a good handle on things where it's like, oh, the save data is going to transfer. I don't know if Nintendo's done that all that frequently before. Sounds like they kind of know what game they have here, and they're doing everything to give it a chance to succeed. I'm a big Tomodachi Life fan, Phil. Any love from you for the series?
I've never played it, but I respect and appreciate people doing things with life sims that aren't just trying to make a Sims clone. As
Yes.
someone who is deep in that series and one sees all the panic happening right now with that and what the future of that series is, and then also saw things like Inzoi that were just like, what if we shove AI into this? And
Yep.
I appreciate people taking a different perspective on like, what matters. It's not necessarily like, building a house and accumulating stuff. It's all these like social story. Like that's cool to me as someone who's never played Tomodachi Life. I think that's neat. Um, do I understand correctly? I saw on social media someone saying that there was not yet a word filter in this demo. Is that accurate? Is that I don't want to like spread misinformation, but
No, that seems pretty accurate. It seems like it's effective or effectively true to say there's basically no filter. Now, there's a couple reasons for that. This is not really an online game. It's something that you do mostly just kind of play by yourself in a silo.
got it.
And Nintendo has announced or like suggested that there will be pretty strict limitations on, I guess, taking videos and being able to share those social videos from the game. Like maybe
Oh, okay.
the share button doesn't work. So Nintendo's not as maybe thinking like, oh, most people are not going to share something from this game that's going to make it look bad. So
Well, it took
whatever.
about 20 minutes because that was that was how I learned a demo came out, was somebody posting videos of
Yes.
their Mii's saying obscene things. So
Yes. You cannot share your screenshots to the Nintendo app, is saying Casey. Right. That.
okay.
That seems pretty like I think that's a bad choice. But I think if it's between them adding a word filter, because I do want my Mii's to be able to say whatever I want. I want to be able to control that. I'm kind of glad we're getting that functionality. It doesn't really make sense to put a filter in there because that can cause some headaches for a game that is offline and just exists for one person to enjoy. So yeah, I expect that to be the way it works when it actually comes out. It also seems like, and I've not played the demo yet, but a lot of the previews were saying that there's a lot more options for gender and dating
Awesome.
and sexual preference, because that was something that was not just an option in Tomodachi Life for the 3DS. They had it very locked down to this is one way that the relationships can possibly work between genders and sexual preference. So kind of them fixing that is one of the things people were waiting for. And so it's kind of been all good news for the Tomodachi Life community. I've been kind of keeping track of the subreddit there, and everyone looks mostly positive at this thing so far. There's a chance this could have a very similar sort of Pacopia-like storyline where we know who's bought the Switch 2 so far. The audience that showed up for Animal Crossing for the Switch 1 has maybe been on the sideline until Pacopia, and now having this as another option there, it's like, oh yeah, they're going to be feasting in that cozy game community, I think. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't expect this would happen, but I appreciate that they seem to be taking, based on what you're saying, the like, here's your toy, you can play with it approach. And I think that
Yeah,
does matter to people. I think,
it does.
again, The Sims is just my reference point because I've spent a lot of time researching Maxis and getting involved with that side of things. But, the fact that people could go off script and kind of tell their own stories with it is what made that game catch on in the first place instead of trying to railroad people. So if people can take this thing and say like, oh, I can do my own story with this, I can, do my own weird thing where my Mii's are into this weird thing and they can, express themselves in different ways. Like that to me has the potential to break out more than something where they are trying to force you into types of stories you're trying to tell or formats or templates. If it can be broken in a way that people enjoy, like absolutely that's going to catch on with I don't know how we define cozy games anymore, but
Yeah.
self-expression games. Something in
Yes.
that field. Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yes, it's definitely just cozy's become this detached from the actual definition of the word and kind of just it's a catch-all for
Well, I've
what
heard
I
people
think.
talk. I've
Yeah.
heard the opposite of running guns. It's a tend and mend. I've heard people
Yeah.
mention, yeah, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Exactly. You're putting things in their place, and that's a whole genre now. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this. That it's always had such a good sense of humor, and we're doing Marry Me Tomodachi right now with Abby, and it's reminding me of like how much fun that game can be, and just letting it sort of do its thing in the background with all the simulations and the relationships and how it figures that stuff out and the rolls of the dice that you don't see and creating fun scenarios that you weren't expecting. That's great. It does seem like this game, Living the Dream, does give you a few more options to like just pick up characters and put characters together and having them interact. So if you want to have a more forceful hand on the way characters are hanging out, you can. And I think that's something that feels like, oh, okay, this is not just Tomodachi Life for the 3DS again, and now on the Switch, which is something Nintendo's often done. That's been Animal Crossing, really, with some minor changes here and there. It feels like, oh no, they're taking the concept and expanding it, and I find that to be pretty exciting. this is a Switch 1 game as well. I think Nintendo definitely, kind of coming out of a period in the holidays and early part of this year where I think a lot of people are looking around being like, what is going to get me excited to get a Switch 2? Or why am I excited that I have a Switch 2? And there weren't a lot of answers to that until Pocopia. But now they have this game. But again, this is happening before we get a 3D Mario, a brand new Zelda, and these games aren't even announced. Smash Brothers, all that stuff. Is this like too similar of a game to Pocopia back to back? Is there any risk of sort of like one eating the other's lunch?
That feels like a gateway drug almost, where it's like, hey, you like Pocopia, do you want this other thing? Almost makes me think like, hey, if you like that, we added social features to Bellabel Park. Fight me in Bellabel Park, or whatever that's called. Like, I wonder if that's not, because again, we've talked about what the audience is for Switch 2. I wonder if they are building more of it's a cozy game, I can play it myself, even if there's no Animal Crossing, directing people to experiences like that is more fruitful than just trying to be, hey, here's Bonanza 2 or whatever the next thing they would do building that direction is.
Yep. All right, let's go ahead and take a break. Plenty more headlines to get to after this. If you want to skip out on these ad messages, you can do so. Go to giantbomb.com/join, become a premium member. Once you're there, you can find ad-free versions of the video and audio program on the website. We will be right back. All right, it's Game Mess Mornings. That's Phil Salvador. I'm Jeff Grubb. We're getting back into the headlines with PlayStation Shutter's first-party partner studio, Dark Outlaw Games. This is from Alex Hopley at Game Reactor. While Epic Games may have taken the majority of the headlines yesterday after laying off 1,000 people and making the future of Fortnite look a bit bleaker than it had just a few days ago, PlayStation has also apparently made some layoffs very recently. Namely, the company appears to have shut down the first-party partner studio, Dark Outlaw Games. This comes via Bloomberg's Jason Schreier, who broke the news on Blue Sky. This hasn't yet been officially confirmed by PlayStation or Dark Outlaw Games. The studio was formed by ex-Call of Duty lead Jason Blundell, who had formed another PlayStation studio in the past, Deviation, which was shut down in 2024. Schreier reckons this is only part of the cuts planned at PlayStation, as the company also wants to take a step away from mobile development, something that built up over the last several years. Around 50 people are reported to have been laid off in total. It feels like, man, the shifting landscape and the shifting strategies from a big corporation like Sony and PlayStation has caused them to constantly be reassessing the decisions that they made years ago and decisions that they kind of just made like maybe last year or the year before. And they're being pretty harsh with, hey, if this doesn't work or we don't have high expectations for this, we're just going to cut it off and move on because we're going to try something different. We don't really know what that looks like yet. The last time we heard from PlayStation really about, hey, what is your idea for how to grow into the future when they're talking to investors, it was, we have 10 to 12 live service games. And obviously we've had a couple of those come out and many of them have not hit. I think, Marathon, which we'll talk about here in a second.
Yeah.
But like even that's like, that's doing well, but is it doing well enough to justify Bungie? And Marathon's got a lot of positive word of mouth. And even if that's not working, can any of these things work? I think that's kind of changed the tune around what PlayStation feels about a lot of these projects that it greenlighted in the last couple of years. So what do you think happened here? What do you think is happening over at PlayStation?
The way that a lot of this was explained to me by a friend who is more like the business side of this is that a lot of companies look at this kind of thing where they're investing in studios. It's not thinking about we're going to get product out of this. They're looking at it almost as just like, I don't know, like corporate Kalshi to an extent, where it's like, all right, let's put 100 million into all these studios. One of these or a couple of these will be a mega hit that will subsidize all of it. But there's only so far you can go with that logic before you are just like, this is the second studio from the same person that they invested in and then shut down. That is wild to me. That just seems like let's throw money at things and see what happens without, I don't know, discipline. Like that's weird. That I know there's probably many stories of studios that we've never even heard of that founded, got some exploratory funding, shut down. But to have it happening this frequently at this scale from one publisher is, boy, they really just spread. They went to the roulette table and just bet on every single number and were like, hey, we'll win. If we get any number of the roulette table, then we'll win something. So, boy, feels like there needs to be a course correction there. That's
Yeah, and I think that's the question. Is like, what does the course correction look like? We don't know. I think Sony probably actually doesn't quite know themselves yet. I do think that is it all kind of goes back to explaining many of the choices they are making right now, including pulling back from releasing games on PC, at least the single player games. I think they want to reset the clock and just go into late PS5 and PS5 Pro and a post GTA 6 world, and then into PlayStation 6 with a lot of their cards back close to their chest. And I'm like, okay, now how can we go from here? And I think they're kind of waiting for Grand Theft Auto 6 to come along before they make any long-term decisions about how they should be spending their money. And so it's like, okay, well, let's cut some costs in the meantime and then kind of come back to the table when we're ready. I don't know what the future could look like for a PlayStation. Obviously they're going to keep doing the stuff that has worked for them, making a console, making it, for the audience that they've always made their console for, making games for the one that they have cultivated in the last decade or so, which is, big single player, narrative driven action adventure games with high production values. Obviously that stuff is all still happening. They've not increased the budget of making those kinds of games, but they've not decreased it either. They're going to kind of keep that steady the way they've been doing it. And if that means it takes Naughty Dog 7 years to release a game right now, then so be it. But they're going to keep doing it. It is always the question of like, we know they want to grow. They keep saying that is crucial to them. Like, what does that look like? And when it is no longer the live service thing, it's just a set of question marks. And I just think across the industry, the sense I get is them going, is it AI? Do we just make games cheaper with AI? And they're kind of everyone's looking at each other, and they all know the answer, and it's no. But they're afraid to admit it, because if it's not that, there is no backup plan right now. Does that sound right to you?
Yeah, so my take on all this is, I don't know if you've been following or looking at iIcon, but to me, that is what the future of the industry looks like. So iIcon is the ESA's new event that it's not replacing E3, but it's their new event they're doing instead of E3. And
Right.
it is very much like an executive summit type event. I think tickets are several $1,000s. I'm not going to iIcon. I think it's also invite only, so none of us are getting invited to iIcon. But their panels are not about like investing in new IPs or game development. They are about like monetizing IP and doing crossovers with like sports leagues and stuff like that. So like, I think if there's a growth play, it's not let's try to make the new Fortnite. It's let's do God of War again and make the God of War TV series and make a new God of War game that's twice as big as the previous God of War game, and just investing in like doing things that are safe but bigger, I feel like is the future of this level of the game industry to an extent. Like when we were talking at SGF, we talked about the idea of game publishers as lifestyle brands and how you can get like accessories that look like an Xbox or all the, Mario branded stuff. Like that feels like if there's any growth happening, it's no longer just in, make a new game and hope it blows up. It's take what we have, double down on it, make it bigger, make it into a recurring evergreen brand. And I wonder if we won't see more of that. I mean, God, we're getting like multiple God of War announcements this year, right?
Yeah. I mean, they had the God of War like 2D game. There's probably a God of War, there's a God of War show happening, and then there's the God of War remakes, and then
that they tease something. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And then there's something that there might be some sort of spinoff that feels like a new franchise, but isn't. So yeah, like they are. You're probably right in that Horizon is the model that PlayStation's looking at. We have a bunch of different games and a bunch of different varieties, and then there's the core game, and it's the mothership style thing. Here's the mothership game. Here's all the little satellites that are poking off of it, and one of those satellites hopefully is another big sort of thing that could grow into a mothership, and that's the movies or TV shows. Excuse me. That could be what a lot of these companies are. I mean, it's working for Nintendo even. So I could see a lot of other companies being like, that's where we need to be. And there is appetite for gaming IP in Hollywood still. So it's like, that's another strategy.
Yeah, I'd forgotten about Horizon, but now that you brought it up, specifically the fact that we have the games and the remasters of the games, and then the Lego game, and then the like K-pop Demon Hunters Horizon, it's like, that's the future, I think, for a lot of these big companies, where they've hit on something that's bankable. And then once in a while, maybe spending money on an Interstellar and hoping that's going to be another thing they can then spin out.
Exactly. And, let that be driven by your biggest studios that you're not afraid to let sort of run wild with a massive budget until they have one miss, and then, everything's on fire. But until that happens, they're like, okay, this is the strategy. All
that,
right.
that got far away
Go
from
ahead.
talking about. That got very far away from talking about Dark Outlaw Games. But no,
Yeah.
that sucks. that's
Yeah,
not
I
great
mean,
for anybody.
yes, it's right, exactly. I'm going to wonder what happened there, but mostly it's going to be, oh, all of these companies are sort of pulling back in this moment. There is a lot of excuses that they can use of, hey, we've had years of increased cost and component costs, and people are all looking around and feeling bad about the economy. So can you blame us for cutting jobs? I think, it seems like there's more to the story about what we know about what happened over at Epic with Fortnite and its layoffs. But we'll have to wait and see. My guess would be, and this is just a guess, would be that they really did extend themselves over at Epic in a bunch of different directions with lawsuits and big business ventures like the Epic Game Store. And those are costing the people who made Fortnite, which was actually successful enough to justify all the investment it was getting in its employees. But that's not how that business is going to operate, because Tim Sweeney is going to take these big swings and it's going to backfire. But again, that's just my guess. I hope we get more information there.
Yeah, the people who are paying for these over investments in these wrong directions are the people who are working on these games, not the people who made those decisions. That's the story. But yeah.
Yep. All right. Analytics firm estimates that Marathon has sold 1.2 million copies, but says only 19% of those are on PS5. This is from Chris Scullion at VGC. Marathon has sold 1.2 million copies, but the vast majority of those aren't on PlayStation 5, according to a report from a game analytics firm. Norway-based Alinea Analytics estimates that Bungie's online first-person extraction shooter has sold around 1.2 million copies, generating gross revenues of $55 million so far. Despite Bungie being part of the PlayStation Studio family, however, Alinea estimates that the vast majority of the game's audience, just under 70%, is based on Steam, with around 800,000 copies sold on Valve's PC platform. I think kind of what I was hearing from like inside PlayStation is, look, this game's selling all right. It's not selling enough to sort of ensure the future of Bungie is unaffected by like the realities of running a company of that scale with that number of employees and just at the cost that it takes to operate it. How much this game would have needed to sell to accomplish that. There's always this concept of why are the expectations so high for these games? And it doesn't work that way in most cases. In a case like this, it's Bungie is this big and has this many employees. Can we pitch a game or make a game that can justify our ongoing existence? And Marathon was supposed to be that. And I think it needed to sell several million more copies kind of out of the gate to answer that question immediately. The strange thing here, I think, Phil, is that this game is getting very positive word of mouth. People do feel really good about it. It feels like it could grow into that sort of thing where it is the sustainable game that they need it to be, but it has to be nurtured. What do you like? Does it get the chance to have that happen?
I don't know, just because of the expectation that's been put on it from above. Like, if this game maintains this kind of level of daily active users, that would be like the greatest success ever in this genre. But like, I'm glad people are loving it. I'm glad it's successful. I think I had kind of written it off because of some of the bad press around it, but like, yeah, I don't know that given the pressure around it, it will get a chance to grow even in the direction that it should. Like, my thought's just been like, how quickly until they try to like put Nicki Minaj in this or whatever, right? Like, that's inevitably with games like this. This is a very silly comparison, but this has also been coming to mind thinking about these kind of games where there's so much expectation put on them. In college, I was at an event once where the organizer way over ordered sandwiches. And so we got like pallets worth of sandwiches, and he was joking like, okay, everyone has to eat 3 sandwiches. And as people would leave, he kept updating the count like, okay, everyone's got to eat 4 sandwiches, everyone's got to eat 5 sandwiches. And just given their strategy right now, even if this is the most successful game of its kind, even if it's a huge success and it has this very dedicated fan base that loves it and will invest in it, Sony's looking at it like, Marathon's got to eat 10 sandwiches right now. And it was never realistic to put in a game like this. Especially one that, again, seems to be targeting a more niche, hardcore, like the Tarkov audience, right, on PC.
Yeah, it's these the green lights happen years ago. They happen in a world where like they're looking at the way games are growing during a pandemic, and they're like, hey, if we can sort of build this thing and kind of make the Fortnite of extraction shooters, the way Fortnite was the Fortnite of battle royale games, we have a strong chance to kind of capture a wave. And it's like, yeah, I get the logic there, but there's a lot of reasons why that might not happen. And one of them might just be this is a genre that cannot have a Fortnite-like thing. Now, Marathon does feel like the one that could make that happen still, but it's going to be a long process and probably a painful one where it's like people feeling really good about it right now. Then they try some things to kind of grow and appeal to a wider audience. And that stuff could easily annoy the people who have shown up since day one. And then the conversations turn sour and then everyone ends up like, with a headache about this game. I don't look for, or I don't envy anyone in the position of having to sort of navigate these waters of taking a big ship like this and being like, we got to find more treasure here with this thing where this thing can generate even more revenue. That's going to be complicated. I would hope that it could just kind of stay what it is, stay true to the audience that loves it and let them enjoy it. But I don't know. I don't think that's going to be enough for Bungie. Yeah. And especially with Destiny 2 kind of just obviously winding down and them not really having a great plan to bring that back and keeping it, making as much money as it might have at one point.
Yeah, it's so frustrating because it seems like, and it already is the kind of game where people say, wait, holy shit, no, you got to play this. And like, that's where like the really organic, sustained growth comes from. That is awesome. But I bet, whoever is higher up at PlayStation is looking at that versus the monthly cost of operating Bungie and is like, be Fortnite faster. And that's just not productive. That's...
Yep. There's some conversation here from Alenia about, the server slam happened so quickly or so soon before the release that there wasn't a lot of time to implement changes that people would have welcomed. And so it's like people are kind of like, I got my film, I'm going to wait and see what happens with updates. They expect more people to come into this game here pretty soon if the word of mouth maintains around it. And again, it seems like it's only growing and will probably grow through this year. So we will see. All right, Xbox boss pushes for Game Pass overhaul, including Netflix collaboration. This is from Jonas Mackey at Game Reactor. The new head of Xbox, Asha Sharma, has had a busy start to the job, kicking off her tenure by promising Xbox's comeback, unveiling Xbox Helix, which is the new system that's coming out soon, and launching a feature that's been in demand for years. Now she appears to be working on yet another project, overhauling Game Pass, where it seems we can look forward to both lower prices and a partnership with Netflix, at least potentially. According to a report from The Information, Sharma is apparently considering additional tiers for Game Pass, one of which would be an ad-supported tier to provide access to games at a lower price. Essentially the same model that most other streaming services for movies and TV shows already use. And speaking of streaming services, the same report notes that Sharma and Netflix CEO Greg Peters have discussed various types of solutions for collaborating, with the latter stating, quote, you would have to do it in a way that works for the consumer and works for both companies. Microsoft's still trying to figure out how to make the Game Pass bundle with Netflix work for Microsoft. So it's like, okay, there's conversations. They might make something happen here. I'll say, Phil, I'm slightly surprised that it seems like one of the points of emphasis is still Game Pass. I kind of was like, oh, are they just going to let that sort of ride on its momentum and stay over there and keep putting new games in there, obviously, but it's probably making a decent amount of money from $30 a month from several million people still subscribed. I'm sure it's worthy of keeping around from a business perspective, but is it worth trying to be like, this is still the future? And the sense I'm getting here is that at least it's part of their future. Do you think that is something they can sort of, I don't know if it needs to be rescued, but sort of reinvigorate the excitement around Game Pass?
It's weird because the framing of this makes it sound like it's almost like they see the problem as like, oh, we need a bigger audience. Let's expand something like Netflix where we can incorporate it. I'm going to get into history mode for a second because I work for the Video Game History Foundation. So we did a big thing last year about Sega Channel, which was sort of Sega's Game Pass back in the day, where it was a monthly subscription service where you got access to a rotating library of games. And very quickly, they realized it didn't have the growth potential they expected because the audience that would use a service like that isn't actually meeting their model of like, okay, let's back up for a second. Hardcore gamers love it because it's like, okay, I get access to all these games all the time. It's cheaper than buying all these games. Even if it's like an ad-supported model or it's integrated into something or it's smaller scale, people who are like just kind of want to dally into the game, just pop into one when it's on Netflix and play it and then pop out. They aren't necessarily hungering to play that many games, right? Like that. I think they found that like once people had 2 or 3 games that they liked, the smaller kind of casual audience or like new owners of Genesis, they stopped subscribing to Sega Channel because it was like, okay, I've got my games, I'm good. That feels even more exacerbated right now at a time when it's like GTA, Fortnite, Roblox, Call of Duty, Minecraft. That's like, the 5 or 6 horsemen, right? I don't know, expanding this to the Netflix audience, I don't know who that reaches. That, like, you're not getting hardcore gamers who want to pay $15 a month for an endless library of games. They would pop in, maybe play something a little bit that they heard about, and then never revisit it again, like the existing Netflix game feature. So I think there's like, I guess to your point, I think you could sustain something like Game Pass if you just went in on that audience and like, all right, our audience is the hardcore players who want, first run Xbox titles as they come out, who want to get access to these deeper, cut libraries without spending $20 to $30 per game. I feel like you could go in on that and just make it a stable, profitable business instead of saying like, no, we need to target anyone who's ever sniffed at a game. We need someone who wants to, turn on their TV and have access to a video game. I don't know that audience exists apart from the few stable games they're playing with their friends.
Yeah, it's that is like the core question. Like right now, it's like, oh, they were for a very long time in user acquisition mode, and that was very clear. They were keeping the price down. They're making the thing very appealing. The refrain from, if not officially Xbox, but from the community, was the best deal in gaming, and that the implication there was like, oh, you're kind of missing out if you're not a part of this. You should jump aboard because they're giving us way too much for what we're paying. That was the concept there, and then that shifted from like, oh, it's not. We are no longer acquiring enough new users. We need to make more money from the people who are already here. So then the price increases came, and they came kind of faster than I think a lot of people were maybe expecting, or maybe not. But it shot up to $30 now for Game Pass Ultimate, and it's clearly like, okay, now we are in revenue generating mode. So it's like, is the implication here that Sharma is going back to user acquisition mode? And so with like prices could come down, and they will make it feel like a really good deal again. What is the potential to add new users? I think there's so many hurdles. I mean, you're talking about just the kind of person who is subscribed to Netflix. Are they interested in a game? Let's say they are. Are they not already getting satisfied from the games on their phone? They probably are. If they're not, do they have a controller that's connected to their TV that they're going to stream a game to, just sitting on their coffee table? Probably not. Like, there is a last mile problem here that has not been solved from the game streaming side of things, if that's what Xbox is primarily talking about, which I think they would be, that no one has solved, of like, hey, how do we just like get these people not to just have a controller, but to connect it via Bluetooth to their television, something that just is not a natural thing for most people to do. And if they don't have that, then do we have an alternative for them to access these games where they can maybe control it with their phone? And at that point, who's going to really be thinking that this is a valuable use of their time and their subscription money? Probably not a lot. I don't know if Game Pass has the juice to move past like the 35 million subscribers that it got at its peak.
Yeah, and I maybe that's fine to be in that place. Like that, I think would be a comfortable place for a service. I saw Death Metal Dan Art in chat was saying something to the effect of like, and I felt this way too, that like the value of Game Pass was getting access to like indies and things you haven't played. When I got a Series X, I was like, I'll sign up for Game Pass. What the hell? I'll give it a shot. And it was like, wow, I can play all the Persona games now for whatever this like cheap price is. I don't think someone who is just like subscribed to Netflix and isn't super interested in that level of game is gonna be moved by that. So like, I don't know that user acquisition makes sense for Game Pass anymore, but I think there is a world where they can double down on who the actual audience is. I just don't know if or how we get there, or if the new Xbox team seems to share that perception of where the market is.
Next up, the RAMpocalypse is already claiming its first PC gaming handheld. This is from Darren Bonthus at GameSpot. Essentially here, INEO has suspended pre-orders and early bird sales of its upcoming Next 2 handheld to address escalating expenses for components. Basically, like, hey, we came back after Chinese New Year, caught up with our partners, and in that time that we were off, the prices on everything went up astronomically, and we're just not going to be able to make this thing make sense anymore. This is very, like, there was a time where we were getting so many of these. A company like INEO was putting out a ton of varied handhelds in 1 year, and that was because components were, they were priced competitively, and this stuff could make sense. Affordable computing was a reality that we had achieved, and now that's gone. It's just kind of gone in a flash, and so this is probably not going to be the first victim. I think it's going to be the kind of thing where you need to be able to pair up your handheld with a service that generates money as well. So the Steam Deck will be safe. The Nintendo Switch 2 will be safe. These are companies that have stores that generate a lot of money. So if they sell hardware at a loss or break even or a slight profit, they're not as worried about it as a company like Neo would need to be. So we're probably in a world where we're getting quite a bit fewer of these handhelds, right, Phil?
Yeah, what the hell? Yeah, I can't imagine going into this being like, this is my business model. I'm just going to make cool hardware. Like, I even think about all the retro handheld people, right? Who are like making those little devices. Yep. Or what's the one that you like, the 2 screens that I can't remember the name of?
The AYN Thor, yeah.
Yeah, well, I have no idea how you make that work as a business anymore. It is kind of fascinating because I feel like we are now coming back around to the origins of computing, but in a like compulsory way that's frustrating, because early on it was like you had to rent space on a computer. It was like there was the computer, in your campus or company.
Yep.
And it was like, you were paying for timeshare on it. And it was funny because at that time, that's when some of the first computer games started happening, because people were like, oh, let's fuck around on this thing. It is very funny that now it's coming back around to like, well, guess what? You have to rent it to have fun. And it's like, it is funny that it used to be like, oh, we can rent time on this thing. Let's have fun. And now it's like, oh man, I have to rent time on this thing to have fun. That's just a very funny transition to have made over the course of 60 years.
Yeah, people worked so hard to make the affordable computing thing where people can have it in their home and own it, and it's like second nature. It almost feels like a utility, and sort of we blink, and suddenly it's about you got to get your AI tokens and your time on the server and rent this stuff from NVIDIA specifically. It's frustrating. Yeah, I expect this to be a trend. We will probably see fewer of these. Does this market recover after a while? I don't know. My guess would be like a lot of the expertise that has gone into this in places like China find other like businesses and other industries where they can apply their hardware expertise and maybe sell it to like enterprises for a much higher amount of money. I bet that shifts and they don't necessarily look back once things calm back down, which would be a shame. It's been nice to have a ton of competition in that space, driving down prices.
Yeah. I will say my mom has a good joke that I think she stole from a comedian probably about like inventions that nowadays seem like, oh, that's great because it's so simple, where it's like, wow, instead of putting in contacts, you can just put these things on over your eyes. And I almost wonder if in 5 years it's going to be like, if and when prices come down, it's going to be like, wow, you can buy a game system. You don't have to subscribe to anything. You just put the games on an SD card and you play it. And like, does that have novelty at a certain point to rebound that? I don't know.
I expect that might exactly happen. Last story here. Square Enix was Metacritic's #1 ranked publisher last year, thanks to 9, quote, good games. This is from Andy Robinson at VGC. I do have the list here. Square Enix was #1. Then Gamer, but like spelled like Game Mirror. That's Game Mirror Games. They had a handful of games. They had an 82 average on Metacritic. Then Capcom, then Thunderful, then Microsoft, Take-Two, Sega, Electronic Arts, Dotemu, and Raw Fury. Worth noting, Nintendo not on the list. That's is PlayStation not on there as well. Those are companies I think kind of did have a little bit below average year in terms of how their games were received. Does this sort of thing matter? This perception around the publisher level? I think it's like Capcom is definitely kind of riding a bit of that wave. Do you think other publishers can sort of replicate that?
I immediately, when this came up, just honed in on whatever the hell Game Mirror is, because I hadn't heard of them, and I looked them up, and they did Dyson Sphere was their big one, but they also like on Steam they have a lot of smaller games I've never heard of, like Typing Break or Hold the Mine, and it's like, it doesn't say anything about sales or sustainability or scale, but like that feels like a hierarchy of power change when you have like a company like that ranking above an Electronic Arts or like a Thunderful relatively even with Sega. Like that's kind of a big deal, I feel like. Again, that doesn't say anything about their business model, except maybe they are people doing it sustainable at a smaller scale like that. But that feels notable. That was the immediate standout to me.
Yes, it definitely feels like there is an opportunity to sort of establish yourself as a quality publisher and build that, build your name into that brand over time. that we were talking about earlier. And I do think like some of like Nintendo's early woes with the Switch 2 this year, which, are maybe a bit overstated, but it is notable that PlayStation 5 outsold the Switch 2 in January and February in the United States. I think some of that does just come down to people were not excited about most of your games. Most of your games were either known quantities or disappointing. And like Mario Tennis being a very good example of that, although that would not have been counted in this, I believe. That would have been for this year's Metacritic. All right, that does it for the headlines. We have a poll question from Monday that we should get to. Let's do that real quick. I'm going to refresh. I am curious about the results from this one for sure. Okay, take your time, YouTube, before refreshing. I believe this is, I had you all grade Crimson Desert. There, YouTube finally loading.
I'm so glad I was here Wednesday and I didn't have to register an opinion about Crimson Desert this week. I'm relieved, but yes,
just keep stay that way. Do not change. You keep yourself safe. All right. If you've played Crimson Desert, grade it. The options were A, B, C, D, or lower. The most common response was B at 37%, then C at 24%, then D or lower at 22%, and A at 17%. It runs the gamut. Just across the board, people feel a way about this game, and it goes from masterpiece all the way down to I really don't like it at all. I mean, officially divisive, I guess we could say. This is an officially divisive game.
Yeah, and I think divisive is always a more interesting place to be than a consensus or even a consensus good. But yeah, this my impression of it, not playing it, is it's just like you go to the butcher and you order 5 pounds of game with the bone in, and they just give it to you, and like that's just just a slab of game, and it's like some people are really into that. Not for me, but I can see how people who are into that would enjoy it.
Yep, yeah, and it's like people many clearly are, and others clearly are having a problem. It's at least fun to talk about. I still don't find the game all that interesting. From like, what's going on here? Is that worth discussing? It's like not too much, but like let's discuss it because there are people who are enjoying this, and I'm hating it. How can we sort of bridge that gap? And it's like, we're not going to be able to, but it's fun to try to figure it out. All right. That's the poll question from Monday. We'll have a new poll question here in a second. Before we do that, Phil, why don't you tell people where they can find you on the internet, what you have going on, and all that good stuff?
Well, I'm on Blue Sky. I think that's the only social media place I'm active anymore. Phil Salv on Blue Sky. I'm doing history stuff everywhere. We got all kind of things rolling out all the time at the Video Game History Foundation. New collections coming out, podcast episodes. We are on a roll. We've got all sorts of cool things coming around. Currently working on a big new collection we have in from the history of Sunsoft. There's some good stuff in there. Can't wait to share it with folks. That's still a couple months out, but give us a follow, support us. We've got things in the pipeline. We've got things that are out in the world that are probably new to you. A lot of stuff coming through. Never boring in this position.
All the Sega Channel stuff from last year was excellent. Go watch all the work that they've been doing. It's been fantastic. I am looking forward to what's happening with Sunsoft as well. All right, new poll question. I put that over there. There it is. Do you have a PC gaming handheld? Yes, no, and I don't want one. No, but I plan to get one. Let's see how people are feeling about this. We kind of check in on this topic every once in a while. Kind of let's see where people are sitting with it right now. Maybe you got a Switch 2 and you feel like I don't need one. You can go ahead and post your feelings in the comments as well. Jan always kind of scrolls through there and sees what people are saying.
If you want to move over to the yes category, based on what we talked about today, now is the time. Like, do not wait an additional week at this point if you're trying to get one.
He's right. He's right. Move now. Make it happen. Those prices are just going to keep going up. Yeah. All right. So that's the new poll question. We'll get the results of that on tomorrow's show of Game Mess Mornings here on Giant Bomb. Speaking of Giant Bomb, it's Wednesday. It's time to do more Blight Club, everybody. Dan is our space ace. It's happening.
He's only got like 40 minutes left in that, right?
I think it's just 40 minutes. Yeah, I think he's going to boot it up, and we're going to be like, if we look at the timer here, you should only have 40 minutes left.
This is the episode. Yeah, this should be the finale, right?
Yeah, this is the run. This is it. It's unbelievable. If you missed the first episode, everybody, you should go check it out. See the reveal. See how his tone changes. He seems determined now, but we'll see if that lasts as he gets back to the game this week. Excuse me. All right. So that's later. I think we might be still doing voicemail dump truck today. That was the plan anyhow. That'll be after the Blight Club. And then it's going to be a messy rest of the week because many of us are heading off to PAX. You can get a Game Mess Mornings tomorrow, everybody. Friday, we will not have an episode. I think me and Sean are going to piece together talking over that Microsoft thing. I think we'll just hang out. It'll be very chill because it's not even like a developer direct. It's like a tier below that in terms of excitement levels. But whatever, we'll hang out and watch it together. It'll be a good time. And then if you are going to be in Boston for PAX, our panel schedule's up on the website. It's on Reddit. We posted it on Blue Sky. Check it out. Come say hi. We would love to see you. We're going to be on the show floor doing some This Is the Run. We're going to be on the Albatross stage on Saturday doing our panel where we're blading Vinny. It is going to be a lot of fun.
Why is it the Albatross stage? I'm not familiar with PAX. What?
You're asking why is it named that?
Yeah.
So I do know that there's some reasoning to it. If it's a bird, it means it's on the second level. And if it's like a land creature, it's on the first level. Why albatross specifically? I'm not sure. But I think there's a bunch of different bird.
That's enough for me. I don't know PAX lore, so that's fascinating to me.
Yeah. All right. There we go, everybody. We're looking forward to seeing you at PAX. I think with all of that out of the way, though, what we should do now is say thank you, Phil, for hanging out with me and talking about video games, man. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely happy to be on. Even I have limited perspective on current things, but happy to muddle through it. It's fantastic. We love your insight. We appreciate it. We'll get you back on again sometime soon. In the meantime, everybody, thank you for listening and watching. You are the best audience in gaming. Until next time, have a good one. Take care of yourself and goodbye.